In light of the humblingly positive response to my last write-up, I've decided to bring you another stop on our Serial Killer World Roundup. Before we begin, I think there are two things to make clear. 1. We will be dealing with some extreme subject matter. In this case, some extreme animal abuse as well. It seems some people may have been taken aback by the content last time. So I thought we'd better add a disclaimer. If you don't wish to read about some sickening, extreme behavior, do not read any further. You have been warned. 2. The purpose of this is simply to present the facts. It is not intended to glorify the killers, nor take some perverted delight in detailing aberrant behavior. Now that we've cleared that up, let's begin. This time we are in Europe, more precisely Germany, and the case of Frank Gust. Frank Gust is a German serial killer currently serving a sentence of life imprisonment. He committed 4 murders between 1994 and 1998. One of them involving rape. In addition, as an extreme animal abuser, he had sexually abused and killed hundreds of animals before moving on to human victims. In the media, Gust was referred to as the Rhein-Ruhr-Ripper. This particular case has caused a great deal of discussion around whether the handling by the media of his deeds is appropriate. Outwardly inconspicuous and reserved, Frank Gust developed from a bullied and tormented child who was repeatedly raped by neighbors to an animal abuser himself at the age of 8. At the age of 15, he moved to a youth center of his own volition and, while still a teenager, started arson, cutting open the first human corpses in the mortuary of the Oberhausen Cemetery. In his early 20s, he got his hunting license and held a legal gun license, which led to his covert killing of larger and larger animals. When Gust was tried in 2000, he had murdered and mutilated a total of 4 women and tortured and killed countless animals, both large and small. Gust is classified within the serial killers as a sexual sadist and was sentenced to life imprisonment. Childhood. Frank Gust was born in 1969 as the second son of his parents in Oberhausen. Since the father drank and did not take care of the family, the mother filed for divorce a few months after the birth. Without alimony, the mother worked full-time while the grandmother looked after the 2 boys. When the grandmother fell ill soon after, Frank was placed from Monday morning to Saturday afternoon in the Oberhausen baby home. According to the Austrian case analyst and criminal psychologist Thomas Müller and the criminologist Petra Klages, who have dealt extensively with the Gust case, the early separation from family led to the first emotional disorders and had an influence on his later criminal career. When Gust was of kindergarten age, his family moved into a small house where he lived with his brother, mother and grandmother, outside of his parents' home. The loner was bullied at an early age, including acts of sexual abuse by other children. When the mother remarried in 1977 and the grandmother moved when her stepfather moved in, the shy boy suffered from the change and became a bedwetter. During this time, he also started shoplifting and became a notorious liar. The stepfather regularly searched him when he came home and severely punished misconduct. After being a victim himself up to the age of about 9, Gust began to act out his own crimes, initially in the form of acts of violence against animals. He later said that it made him feel in control. I was no longer a victim. Already at the age of 8 he showed a pronounced tendency towards animal cruelty. When Gust was 9 years old, he bought a guinea pig from a classmate, but he wasn't allowed to keep it because his stepfather was allergic to animal hair. His grandmother then told him he should kill the animal. He tied it with plant fiber to sticks driven into the ground and tried to hit the immobilized animal with a concrete slab. However, the concrete slab missed the head, hitting the body instead, causing its intestines to spill out. This sight gave Gust great pleasure, and he began to dig into the guinea pig's abdominal cavity with his hands. By doing so, he touched the intestines and liked the feeling, the warmth when he put his hands in the abdominal cavity. He later described this formative event, experienced with great intensity, as a kind of key experience. He even bathed in the blood and innards of living beings at home. But his mother denies this. Frank Gust had his first sexual contact with a human being with his grandmother's pedophile neighbor. Because she also had little time for the 8-year-old at the time, he was more often with the man who abused him and even rented him out to other pedophiles on several occasions. Because his child's body was understandably not anatomically developed for anal intercourse, he said he came home several times with bloody underwear. But his mother claims that didn't happen. Quote, puberty and adolescence. In order to re-experience the lust he felt at the sight of the dying guinea pig, Gust tortured and killed rabbits, which he stole from the neighborhood, again and again in the following years. With the onset of puberty, this lust increased and he began to masturbate at the sight of the animals being tortured. So that his sex drive, sadism and violence began to combine. At the age of 13, Gust attempted to satisfy his necrophiliac tendencies by breaking into morgues and having sex with the corpses stored there, slashing them open for the purpose. He desecrated the lifeless bodies, cutting them open, in one case severing the head to place just inside the front door so that it rolled across the hall when it opened. However, since the bodies were already cold, he did not get the satisfaction he had hoped for. His fantasies at this point also revolved around killing horses. But it was not until the age of 24 that Gust put this idea into practice. After his arrest, Gust reported that his greatest wish was to touch the pounding heart of a dying woman. In February 1985, Frank Gust went to the youth home in Oberhausen of his own accord because the conditions at home were a burden. When asked how many animals he had killed in the course of his career as a criminal, Gust stated that it must have been several hundred animals, but less than 1,000 if you add up large and small animals. In 1992 he got his hunting license as a means to an end. After killing wild rabbits, lamb, cows, and horses also followed. Gust partially removed the intestines to lie down on, which made him feel safe. A few weeks after his last murder, Gust bought a sheep. He tried to imagine how resilient a woman could be. The verdict quotes him as saying, "The thought arose of blowing up a woman who was fully conscious after I had raped her." He drove the sheep to a lonely hut in the forest. He told his wife that he was flying his model airplane. He tied the sheep and imagined a defenseless young woman lying in front of him. He tortured the sheep, also plucking out an eye and penetrating the bleeding eye socket. He prepared 2 explosive charges in the animal's body. Then he explained to the sheep that he was going to explode its whole body. But in my imagination, I was talking to a woman whom I actually saw in front of me. Gust disappeared behind the hut. There I lit another cigarette, smoked quietly and listened to the fading bleating, which I perceived as screaming. Then I set off the explosives. There was a very loud explosion. Then there was silence. For his own satisfaction, he killed several hundred animals and raped them post-mortem. Killings. Between 1994 and 1998, Frank Gust murdered at least 4 women. His first victim in 1994 was a 28-year-old South African hitchhiker named Catherine Thompson, whom he murdered on Thursday, September 8. Catherine was a 28-year-old white South African hitchhiker. He took her to the Netherlands and shot her in the back of the head. Then he severed her hands and head, slashed her chest several times, and penetrated the corpse anally and vaginally. During the return journey, he performed sexual acts on the head he had taken with him. In 1996 he murdered 34-year-old prostitute Svenja Ditmerel Din on Tuesday, October 22. Gust shot her in the back of the head during intercourse. When he later tried to cut off her head, he found that the shot hadn't killed her, but that didn't put him off his plan. After mutilating her, he left the body on a forest path near Willich and threw her head into the Rhine at the Rheinberg-Orsoy ferry dock. His desire to feel her insides was so great that he had almost completely gutted her. The excitement he felt was almost at maximum. His third victim was Gerlinda Newman, his 47-year-old aunt of his first wife. She was murdered on Sunday, April 19, 1998, although her body was never found. He claimed she asked him to help her commit suicide. Experts did not believe the story, suspecting he killed her because she had apparently wanted to betray him. He is said to have thrown her remains into a wildlife feeding station. His final victim was a 30-year-old prostitute called Sandra Aus der Wiesche, whom he murdered in Essen on Sunday, June 21, 1998. After leaving school, the heroin-addicted Sandra had slipped into the drug and prostitute milieu and was Gust's fourth victim and at the same time the first whose murder he had been planning for months. He wanted to torment and torture a woman alive for the first time. Gust approached her on the street and promised her 400 German marks if she would let him tie her up. Needing money for her next shot, she agreed. Gust first tied Sandra in his car with ratchet straps. He bit her, burned her with a lighter and tortured her for hours. He tortured her so severely. He explained in his confession that he had no idea how severe her vaginal injuries were. That he thought for a moment of getting her to a hospital. But he then thought better of it, and actually handed her the loaded gun he had and asked her to shoot him. "If you don't shoot me now, I will kill you," because he realized this behavior would continue until he was stopped. So, he better put an end to this shit. She, however, refused, saying she just wanted him to let her go. He then untied her from her bonds and pretended to want to release her. After she got out of the car, he shot her from behind. He cut off the corpse's hands because he could not untie the handcuffs and threw them about 50 kilometers away in a forest. He made sure to stress in his confession that the severing of her hands was nothing symbolic, just a practical move. He was proud of this murder, because he stressed that he tortured her physically and mentally until I could torture her no more. Curiously, another man had been arrested for this murder, but the sperm found on the body was not a match, leading to his eventual release. He was given the name Rhein-Ruhr-Ripper by the tabloid media because he committed most of his crimes in the Rhein-Ruhr area, and these showed parallels to the murders of Jack the Ripper. Frank Gust usually placed the corpses of his severely mutilated and partially eviscerated victims in places that were easily visible so that they could be found immediately after the crime. Only his aunt's body remained missing. Arrest and verdict. As early as 1994, after the murder of Catherine Thompson, Gust confessed to his former girlfriend Azel that he had killed a hitchhiker. According to her statement, he led her to the forest and showed her the severed hands. But she did not call the police after her friends convinced her he was just bragging and the hands were those of a doll. Also in 1994, Frank Gust also told his mother that he had already killed someone. After she called him to ask what he had to do with death. Since every time she did a tarot reading for him the death card always came up. He went to her house and told her the edited version. She contacted 2 police officers of her acquaintance who completely ignored her, telling her, "You know he's full of shit. Just forget it." It was not until November 1999 that his stepsister alerted the police to the serial killer. Gust was arrested a short time later. However, he retracted the confession. It was only through the research of an editor of the TV show Aktenzeichen XY and DNA traces that he was found guilty. In his subsequent confession, he insisted that his wife at the time be present. He had hoped that in marriage he would not only be able to suppress all this perverse garbage that was inside me, but to be able to switch it off permanently, says Gust today. Long before we met, there was something within me that I can only inadequately call my dark side, he wrote to her. Example: you and I are walking through a store and a pretty woman comes into view. I see her, think, pretty, and that's it. Now the same situation without your presence. I see the woman and as soon as I don't classify her as ugly, the term, cattle for slaughter, flashes through my mind. Everything around me becomes irrelevant in a split second. And just as quickly an accurate image of how I'm torturing and killing her builds up. She later recalled, "He often amazed me with his knowledge of anatomy," she says. "The heart is as big as a fist," he told her. "A uterus is the size of a pear." Or, "Did you know that the brain is gray when viewed in daylight?" Quote. He later remarried. After Gust's arrest, the police found a file on his computer called Test X Storage Capacity Test. For his next victim, Gust had compiled a list of supplies, including 8 cable ties at least 37.5 centimeters long, 4 pieces of tape 10 centimeters wide 35 centimeters long, 2 pairs of disposable vinyl gloves, small, 5 condoms, 10 garbage bags, cutters and blades, condom filled with gunpowder and 3 pieces of primer. Sulfur or hydrochloric acid as highly concentrated as possible. Axe. 3 explosive capsules. 3 incendiary capsules. He had also prepared a spoon sharpened on one side, with which he wanted to remove the eye of his victim while she was still alive. Shortly before the trial, his wife had divorced him. On September 21, 2000, the Duisburg jury sentenced him to life imprisonment for 4 counts of murder. This was linked to the requirement to undergo therapy. He had demanded the death penalty, but this was not an option as there was no death penalty in place. Gust had previously been certified as having limited criminal liability. He began his sentence in a forensic prison immediately after the verdict. After just 6 months, he broke off the therapy and was transferred to normal prison. He justified stopping the therapy by stating that he could not be treated and expressed his wish to be kept in custody until his death, since he would be a permanent danger to others in freedom. He has been in prison in Wörl since then, but since 2020 he has had regular escorted release again. He remarried and applied for release after serving his sentence. Incredibly enough, since no preventive detention was ordered for him despite the heinous acts and the risk of recidivism, his prison sentence expires in 2026. Frank Gust would then be a free man. According to the Duisburg Public Prosecutor's Office, there is even the possibility of suspending the remainder of his sentence under certain conditions. His mom says, "He stay locked up in jail. Leave him inside. Otherwise another woman will die." Here is part of an interview with criminologist Petra Klages, who later wrote a book about him. The discussion is about his animal abuse. Petra Klages: "And then what did you do with the rabbits?" Frank Gust: "Mostly shot them. Then as soon as they went down, I cut 'em open, took out the guts, put them in buckets and collected the guts from lots of rabbits. I went down to the basement with them and played sex games with them." Petra Klages: "With the entrails of the animals? But you also reported other incidents where you opened a rabbit and penetrated the abdominal cavity with medical instruments, such as a knife. Did you do that too?" Frank Gust: "Yes. Starting with the emergence of the first purely sexual feelings, i.e. at the age of 11 or 12. Petra Klages: "And did you kill the first animals between the ages of 8 and 10? Frank Gust: "That was earlier, when it was really just about feeling with your hands. Penetrating the animals came later. At some point that was an integral part." Petra Klages: "You basically cut open the small animals and then penetrated the body openings that you made in the animals?" Frank Gust: "Yes." Petra Klages: "It wasn't just small animals. There were also horses and cows. Right?" Frank Gust: "Yes." Petra Klages: "Other animals?" Frank Gust: "2 adult sheep. A lamb. We already had small animals. Guinea pigs, if no rabbits were available. There were also 2 wild sheep. Wild goats. Exactly the ones I killed in a park at night, and then horses and cattle. But it wasn't about having sex with the animals anymore. The body size was just so big that it got me closer and closer to my main wish of being able to fully immerse myself in the body, and then it wasn't just about penetration, but about total immersion." Petra Klages: "Didn't sexuality play a role at all during the crimes?" Frank Gust: "Not always. No." Petra Klages: "That was probably already combined with sexuality. Did you torture the animals additionally?" Frank Gust: "Yes. The small animals." Petra Klages: "But not the large animals?" Frank Gust: "No. I killed or stunned them. 1 shot each. Not for any animal welfare reasons. Because I didn't want to hurt them. That would sound a bit strange if I cut him open afterwards. But simply out of sheer cowardice. They were big enough that theoretically they could have hurt me. A rabbit can be restrained so that it cannot move at all. Then no resistance is to be expected. But with a sheep it's quite different. Because if it really lunges, it can really hurt. And in a horse, that can be deadly." There is also a 4-part documentary on YouTube. This is in German only. There seems to be very little material in English. All the content above is taken from German sources.